Okay, so let's continue and maybe we can finish these slides on differentiation, vertical differentiation today. So here we go. So this is in contrast to horizontal differentiation, right? So vertical differentiation, all consumers agree on what is preferred or the best product and the next best product, right? So in particular, in the slides that you'll see here, Z indexes the quality. So a higher Z means a higher quality, and everyone sort of recognizes that. So that's why oil demand is increasing in Z. So that's what it means. However, there's a sense in which some consumers differ in their willingness to pay for quality. So here there are types as well of consumers who would have a different willingness to pay for quality. Some would have, when faced with a quality level Z, their willingness to pay goes up higher than someone else, right? So that's just someone who prefers a higher quality than some other consumer. So in the slides that you'll see here, there'll be two types of customers, one with a higher willingness to pay for quality than the other. Okay, so first we'll do price and quality choice with just one product. How do changes in quality affect consumer demand? Examine how a firm's profit will increase by offering a new quality. Some features, set of features that can be used to measure the product quality valued by consumers. Okay, so the firm knows that each consumer is willing to pay extra to get a higher quality product, but the amount can vary. If the consumer value and the quality of the product offered is greater than the price being charged, the consumer purchases the good. That's just another way of saying if the willingness to pay is higher than the price charged, then the consumer purchases the good. So here we have a very a special case, right? So again, we're just interested in purchasing a good, one good. Sort of like the horizontal case earlier, right? So each person in the horizontal market will purchase only one product, and they will purchase the product if the willingness to pay, which is here a function of the quality and the person's willingness to pay for quality, is greater than the charge or the price being charged. So the demand curve facing the monopolist depends on the precise quality of the product, which is this is the demand curve, where quality is Z. Okay, let's just say a number Z. An increase in quality raises the market clearing price for any given quantity. With consumers buying just one good. The demand curve reflects the ranking of consumers in terms of their reservation prices for a good of a specific quality Z. The intercept reflects the reservation price of the consumer with the highest willingness to pay for the quality. So there are two ways an increase in quality can shift the inverse demand curve. Suppose the initial, I think here, suppose your initial quantity is Q1 and the initial quality is Z1. The market clearing price for this quantity is P1, which is the willingness to pay for the Q1th customer. The marginal consumer, or the Q1th consumer, this consumer is different between buying and not buying. The inframarginal, those to the left, are those who buy the product. Okay, so based on the discussion, here's Q1, and there are two kinds of demand, but we start here first with Z1 and Z1, and at Q1 the price is P1, and for these people and for these people, they all buy because their willingness to pay, which is again a function of Z and a function of their willingness to pay, is satisfied. So that's why they're buying. The choice of quality amounts to a decision as to which demand curve it faces. So an increase in quality are attractive since they relate to demand. As you can see here, for either situation, an increase in quantity will increase or shift up the demand curve. Actually, it's pivot. Picture on the left will pivot along the quantity axis, and you're shifting along the price. So that means everyone inframarginal here is getting a higher willingness to pay. Okay. Whereas in this one, you're pivoting along a price, the highest willingness to pay, and it's moving along the quantity realm here, quantity line. Okay. The difference is here, there's also going to be an increase in the willingness to pay for the inframarginal. But the increase in the willingness to pay is greater the smaller your willingness to pay is originally. And in particular, for the highest willingness to pay here, it doesn't shift at all. Right, so that's the difference between picture on the right, picture B, and picture A on the left. So the monopolist that controls both the quality and quantity has two profit maximizing conditions. For a given choice of quality, so given your Z, the MR from the last unit sold should equal marginal cost of making that unit at that quality. And then for a given choice of quantity, the marginal revenue from increasing quality of each unit of output should equal the additional marginal cost of increasing the quality of that quantity of output. Okay, so let's get to something specific. Assume an increase in quality increases the reservation price of inframarginal consumers. So this is more like picture A. This one. Right? Where the Z will affect this one, which is your maximum willingness to pay directly, and it will shift it up. Okay. So regardless of quality, at the price 0, 50 units will be sold. Increased quality causes the demand function to rotate clockwise along about the point Q is equal to 50. The marginal cost of production is 0. Now, there are costs to quality. So this is like the cost of setting quality, which is quadratic in Z. Marginal cost of increasing quality, and if you take the derivative of this, it's just 10Z. The profit of the firm is the following, which is this one, the price, which is based off this demand curve, times Q minus FZ, which is the following. So note that it's a function both of Z and Q. Okay, and as we see here, there are two conditions that you have to meet. So first, you get the choice. Given Z, what is the maximum Q? So you get the derivative with respect to Q, and that gives you a Q star of 50 over 2 of 25. Okay. So notice that Z, the reason why it's not a function of Z is because Z is it's basically a product of Z. Right? So your marginal revenue will rise and fall based on Z. But ultimately, it's 50 minus 2Q. And as long as this is 0, your marginal revenue is 0. Okay. The optimal price is the following, which is a function of Z. That's inescapable. Now, the monopolist's quantity choice is independent of the quality choice, but the profit maximizing price is affected by quality. Profit maximizing choice of quality equals or leads to compare additional revenue resulting from an increase in Z with an increase in the design cost. Okay. So we're using the fact that Q is not a function of Z here to show that P times Q, right, is basically this, which increases linearly in Z. And the marginal cost of increasing quality is 10Z. So you equate marginal revenue, which is this one. Oh, this is not marginal revenue. This is revenue. So you get that derivative of this. And equate it to the marginal cost, which is this one. So basically, it's 625 equals 10Z. So Z equals 62.5. Now, as usual, the monopolist's quality choice is too low. An increase in Z rotates the demand curve upwards and increases the total surplus earned from the 25 units that are always sold. Because 25 is always going to be, as we said, the Q will not change, whatever your Z is. The social optimum requires that the quality be increased, so long as the gain in total surplus exceeds the extra design cost. However, the monopolist only gets to keep the increase in producer surplus that the quality increase generates, because the producer surplus is less than the total surplus. The monopolist stops short of producing the socially optimal quality. Okay, so now we're offering more than one product in a vertically differentiated market. So this is actually a fairly complex model at this point in the course. So we wanted to take this slow, especially during the discussion class. So we're going to try to delve deeper into some of the derivations here. In this particular lecture, I will invite you to do the derivations on your own. And when you come to class, discussion class, we'll try to do it there, okay? All right, so let's say now that there are two types of consumers, and therefore, well, they're distinguished by their willingness to pay for quality. So one consumer likes quality more than the other. Although again, because it's vertical, Z is undisputed, right? A higher Z will increase both of their demand functions. Again, each consumer buys one unit of the good. Consumer buys the quality of the product yielding the most CS, right? Because the quantity is fixed. So the only question is, which good do I want? The one with the higher quality or the one with the lower quality? Now, CS obtained from consuming a product with quality Z is the following, right? So notice the I's. So the I's are indexed 1 and 2. So VI, or 1 or 2, equals theta I. Now, theta is the measure of value that consumers of type I place on quality. Okay. Just give me a second. I'm going to try to draw here on your thing. Okay, so that's theta I. That's the willingness to pay for quality. Meanwhile, zeta sub I, zeta underscore bar, I'm just gonna like that, is the lower bound on quality below which a consumer of type I chooses not to buy the product. So remember, if Z here is less than ZI, then this whole thing is negative. Negative plus a negative is a negative. Okay. So you would rather not consume anything, because if something gives you a negative utility, then you would just say no thanks. Okay. Next is Z sub 1 is greater than Z sub 2 under bar. So the lower bound from the type 1 is greater than the lower bound of type 2, and the lower bound for type 2 is exactly 0. So type 2 will buy anything because there's no quality less than 0. So any quality that's even just a little greater than 0, it will get utility from, right? But consumer 1 is looking for Z, which is at least higher than Z underscore 1. Okay, now type 2 consumers are willing to buy the product of any quality, which is as long as it's not negative consumer surplus. Okay, so similar to second degree price discrimination, the monopolist chooses a product line that identifies and separates customers of different types. Now, suppose that the firm is able to produce a quality in this range, Z under bar, Z over bar. Okay, these Z over bar will be defined a little later, right? MC are constant and identical, so it's 0. So we're setting aside marginal cost. Our assumption one is this: Z over bar is greater than theta 1 Z1 over the difference between the willingness to pay. Group 1, 2. Now, just to be clear, I don't know if it's clear here. Is it clear? Has it been stated? Not yet. Oh, it hasn't. Okay. It should be clear that theta 1 is greater than theta 2. So theta 1 here is greater than theta 2. So the willingness to pay by group 1 has to be greater than the willingness to pay for quality for group 2. In the same way that group 1 has the higher minimum quality threshold, the Z underscore 1, which is this one. It's greater than 0. So we'll sort of interpret this later. But we can see here that if there is a big willingness to pay gap between group 1 and group 2, then that's more readily satisfied. And we'll see the importance of assumption 1 is that it allows second-degree price discrimination to occur. Okay, so consumer 2, remember, consumer 2 is the one with the lower willingness to, well, the lower minimum Z, right? The other bars 2 is 0, and you charge a low enough price for consumer to buy the good. Now, consumer type 2 will buy if the price happens to be less than this. So you can see that from here because for utility V to be greater than 0, it must be that theta 2 times Z2. Now, the Z's are now indexed by a certain quality that's meant for them. That's why you have two types and therefore two products. Remember, one product is meant for the group 1 and one product is meant for group 2. So here we're saying if the group 2 buys the product that's meant for them, theta 2 times Z2, and remember this is 0, that has to be greater than P2. Okay, which is this condition. Since if you're going to sell, you'd want to increase this as high as possible, and the highest is this. So that's why this will bind. This will become an equality. Now, what about consumer 1? Consumer 1 is the one with a high willingness to pay. It's the one who really wants a high quality because the high Z bar, under bar 1 is higher than 0. So it has two kinds of constraints here. The first one here is what's called the incentive compatibility constraint. So for consumer 1, I want him to buy the product that's meant for him, which is quality Z1 as opposed to quality Z2. So his utility, which is this one, buying Z1. So this one, this just comes from the definition of his utility, wherein the Z now is now Z1. His utility when consuming Z1 must be greater than his utility when consuming whatever the second product is, Z2. Okay, and paying the price of group 2's product. So this is incentive compatibility. You have to get at least as much as this, preferably higher, right? And then the second condition is that their utility cannot be negative because they'll just stop buying. It's negative. So this insists that it's positive. Now, the first piece of derivation here is that you can substitute the price of good 2 into the first expression, which will give you the following. So maybe we can work on this in class. But this expression says that the price for good 1, okay, this is very similar to the price for good 2. This is the price for good 2, and this is the price for good 1. Except now it's lower by some amount. So this is similar to the price discrimination, second-degree price discrimination argument we had earlier. To convince the high types or the consumer 1 types to buy, there's sort of a limit to the price at which you can sell to them. Okay, you can't sell to their total output here, total direct willingness to pay here. But you also need to subtract something, okay, which is theta 2 Z2. Okay. So that's the important thing. This is positive. So that's why you're subtracting something from here. So the price won't be as high, might not be as high as it were in the normal sense. Now, the price is greater, the higher are the values that the two customers place on quality. So that means theta 1 and these two things together. Okay, but generally theta 1 is the larger one than theta 2. So the higher the theta 1 is, the higher P1 is. Next, the higher the differential between Z1 and Z2 is, the more likely P1 is also higher. Okay, so recall that this versus this, there's a negative here. So the bigger the difference between theta 1, Z1 and Z2, the more likely you are to increase the price for consumer 1. The monopolist then has an incentive to increase the quality differential between the products. When the last condition is fulfilled, the condition that type 1 consumers receive a non-negative surplus is now this. Okay, so this is the non-negative surplus. And you combine it with this. This is the second sort of derivation. It will become this. Okay. So this essentially combines the incentive compatibility and the non-negativity condition into one. This tells us what the values for Z2 should be in relation to what are, from the point of view of the seller, exogenous, because theta 1 and theta 2, they can't control that. The monopolist can't control this. Can't control theta 1. Cannot control theta 1 under bar as well. So this relationship, in order to fulfill incentive compatibility, in order to fulfill positive utility by group 1, this tells you what Z2 ought to be. Okay. And given assumption 1, it follows that the condition of non-negative consumer surplus can be satisfied by some Z2. Again, this sort of bounds Z2 to be lower than or equal to Z bar, which again comes from assumption 1. Some Z bar here. All right, next. Now, the incentive compatibility constraint is always satisfied for 2 consumers. Okay. For them not to buy, for type 2 consumers, for the low quality, the people who prefer low quality, for them not to buy the high quality, it must be that theta 2, which is their willingness to pay for quality, times the quality parameter of the high quality product minus the price. This has to be negative. In other words, they'd rather not buy it, right? It's negative. Now, given this, which again comes from the incentive compatibility, it implies this, okay, which must be true because Z1 is bigger than Z2, okay? And these thetas here have a positive value. The difference in the thetas have a positive value. So that means if that's negative, Z1 must be bigger than Z2. In other words, the price is given by the following. This is the utility function. This is the incentive compatibility constraint. This is the non-negativity condition for group 1. Then, not only are we satisfied for group 1, but we're also satisfied for group 2. Okay. So that makes sense because there's only 2. There's only 2. Okay. And we sort of like engineered this such that if it satisfies for one prefers his own product than two's, we will this one also tells us by monotonicity that the low types would have a negative utility. Okay, so our final topic here is the what is the Z, or what are the Z's? Z1 and Z2. Exactly. What are the Z1s and Z2s? So let Ni be the consumers of each type. Again, no production costs. P1 is given earlier as theta1 Z1 minus this thing. So like we said, P1 is lower because of the existence of Z2. P2 is equal to theta2 Z2. Your profits will be just this. Again, there's no costs. And if you plug in the values, it's this. A little bit of rearrangement, it's this, where the Z's are all here. Z1 is all here. Z2 is all here. So as you can see, the profit depends very much on, well, this is positive, but we don't know what this is, because this is a positive minus a positive. So this could be a positive or a negative. So it depends. Okay, now the firm should set the quality of Z1 to be its highest. Okay, highest maximum quality possible, which is Z over bar, whatever that is. But based on assumption one, it's also bigger than a certain combination of thetas and Z's. So Z1 star should be set as high as possible. Why? Because look at the first derivative with respect to Z1, it's just this. So you should set Z1 as high as possible. The only question is, what is Z2? Now, the derivative of profit with respect to Z2 is just this guy times a minus 1. So there are cases. Okay. So the case one is when the N1 theta 1 is less than the sum of both ends, number of customers, times theta 2. In which case, if that's negative, then the coefficient on zeta 2 is positive. So profit is increasing in Z2. Therefore, again, there's only one quality, which is they're both high quality, the highest quality possible, which is Z over bar. The firm should set only one product quality, and that should be the highest. Will it sell to one or both consumers? So selling to both, the product is priced at this number, okay, equals theta 2 Z bar over bar, okay. So notice that it's the theta 2 that determines the common price, right? Because it's the lower one. If it were higher, then negative yung utility in group 2. Type 2 consumers would have their all their surplus extracted, but given this one, type 1 consumers enjoys some consumer surplus. And firms earn a total profit of this, where this is basically the price. Now you can choose to sell only to the type 1 customers. In this case, you want to extract all of their willingness to pay. So the product is priced at the following: theta 1 Z over bar, which is the quality level that you've chosen, minus Z over bar under bar 1. So this just comes from utility, right? And price is equal to this. So all of the willingness to pay, all the utility goes to the monopolist. And the profit from this strategy is just this one. Now, selling to both type of consumers, which happens to be this one, is more profitable if this expression here is bigger than this expression here. And that depends on this. For this case, if this is true, and the term Z over bar minus Z1 under bar is greater than 1, then the condition holds. So it's more like then you'd want to sell to both type of consumers. Okay. Therefore, in case one, in which this is true, the monopolist offers a single product quality of Z over bar and prices it at P star equals theta Z over bar in order to sell to both types of customers. Now let's talk about case two. In case two, essentially what this is saying is that the high or the type 1 people, the high quality people, sort of overpower everyone else, right? Everyone else at the low quality. So this will tell us that we want to prioritize the high quality. So the profit essentially is decreasing in Z2. So the firm has an incentive to offer two qualities that are as different to each other as possible. So like before, Z1 star is the highest possible. And you set Z2 as low as possible, but not necessarily to its minimum level. So type 1 customers should receive non-negative consumer surplus, which is this one. And this is something that's familiar. We've seen this before. P1 is essentially this one. So you're getting all of their consumer surplus, all of the type 1 consumer surplus. Okay, because all of this utility here, you're equating it to the price that you're asking for. Since this is true and Z1 star is equal to the highest possible Z over bar, P1 equals theta, this one, which we have already figured out under, what is this? Under the earlier slides. Substituting to the non-negativity constraint gives you this one. And the monopolist chooses Z2 to be this one. So this, again, this one gives you whatever the Z2 is needed in order to fulfill the non-negativity constraint for both of them, for Z1, for group 1 and group 2. Therefore, the monopolist chooses this one coming from here. Okay, you can just rearrange it to get this one. And this very much is familiar to us because it looks like assumption 1. But this sort of ties down Z2 star, the needed Z2 star. So notice Z2 star is not necessarily 0. It's not, actually, it's definitely not 0. But it's tied to the low value of Z1, right? Z1 under bar. The impact of the assumption that the monopolist cannot distinguish the two consumer types. The monopolist would like to set Z2 lower, but cannot do so if the monopolist is to offer products that make the consumer self-select into their true types. Profit maximizing prices for the two goods are Z2 star, which is this one, and P2, which is theta 2 times Z2, okay, where Z2 is this one, so P2 star is this, okay, which is a function of Z lower bar and the gap between theta 1 and theta 2. So the higher the gap, the lower the price for P2. And then theta 1 times theta 2. Substituting Z star 2 and Z1 star Z over bar into P1, which is equal to this, will give you this P star, which is again just theta 1 times whatever the highest Z is minus Z1 under bar. So this is the entirety of group 1's willingness to pay being siphoned into the price. Type 1 consumers are charged their maximum willingness to pay for the highest quality possible. And in the same manner, type 2 consumers are charged their maximum willingness to pay for the lower quality. Okay. But then the quality for the lower quality is not 0. It has to be some positive number. And it's this positive number. In offering both goods, the monopolist extracts all the consumer surplus, but has to compromise on the qualities that are offered. The aggregate profit is the following. So this is the profit from the high type. So this is the highest possible for the high type, because this is the highest possible Z. And this is the minimum Z that they're asking for, and then they're selling to all of the type 1s. For type 2, okay, this is not necessarily, you want to sell a little bit to type 2, but not too much, because it will make it too attractive to type 1. Okay, so this is the type 2 component. The intuition behind the result, that in one case, the monopolist wants to offer only one high quality good, but on the other, the firm wants to offer both a high quality and low quality good. When offering only one high quality good, it's priced at a uniform price, theta 2Z over bar. And both consumers will buy it. Okay, that's the N1 theta 1 less than N plus 1, N1 plus N2. Remember that. When offering high and low quality, okay, you'd want to lower Z2 as much as possible, but not that close to 0, but not necessarily not at 0, because you want the group 2 to buy something. And you don't want to have the quality of group 2 too high, because you don't want to tempt group 1. When offering a high quality and low quality good, the high quality is offered at this one, while the low quality good is priced at the following. So the high quality people will pay more under product differentiation, right? Then under uniform pricing, because this is under uniform pricing. And this one, P2 star will be less than P star under price discrimination. Okay, because you'd want to lower the quality to the low quality willingness to pay people. So offering two quality differentiated goods allows the monopolist to charge a higher price to type 1 consumers, but forces the monopolist to lower the price it charges to type 2 consumers. For this strategy to be profitable, there needs to be sufficiently many type 1 compared to type 2, which is exactly this one. So if the situation were this, then it would want to offer the two products separately, focusing essentially on type 1, and then selling a little bit to type 2, but having the price and the quality to be very, very low, so as to not tempt group 1, and as to get some of the group 2 people to buy a little bit. And that's the end of our product variety lecture. I'll see you in class.